Good morning, it's October 3rd, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Are you better off today than you were in 2020? It's a question that pops up on most political polls, and it's probably the most important one that's asked. We saw inflation run amok and peak at just over 9%. We watched gas prices soar to almost $5 a gallon on a nationwide average. Grocery prices are higher than before and show no indication they'll be retreating. Travel costs are astronomical and heading higher. And the answer to all these questions, an issue in the mind of Joe Biden, is that his economic programs are working, and he's given them the moniker Bidenomics. Well, this, of course, is a play on the term Reaganomics, and Joe plagiarized yet another person in trying to win a second term. He seemed to like to plagiarize things throughout his life. I'm old enough to remember Reagan. I was working as a staff member in the U.S. Senate when he was elected in 1980. The term Reaganomics was not used that much by the administration, but because we were heading into a recession, the media pounced on the term. Reagan stuck to his guns and began a process of regulatory restraint and urged Congress to enact the tax cuts that he was proposing. His goal was to increase incentives to work and to decrease any of those incentives to not work. It took a while for the Reagan program to work its magic, and the economy fell into a painful recession that lasted through most of 1982. And this was the year the media loved to use the term Reaganomics, and it surged because liberal media newsrooms wanted to ensure that the president owned the political consequences of his programs. But the joke was on the fourth estate. The economy roared back in 1983, initiating the 7 fat years of robust growth. Listeners to this podcast may perhaps not be surprised to learn that the media mentions of Reaganomics plummeted in 1983, and our 40th president would later joke that when the press stopped using the term, that's when he knew his program was working. Now we have Joe Biden trying to develop his own catchy phrase, and what he's forgotten or maybe never understood was that if you're going to use a term like Bidenomics, you better be sure the public thinks your programs are making them better off and not worse. Polling shows that the public is not buying either Biden or the term Bidenomics. I think this is now dawning on many Democrats who are fretting about Biden's approval ratings, and being politicians, they soon start thinking of themselves more than the country. There's a growing number of Democrats who are privately telling the White House staff that Uncle Joe should quit using the term. Politico, a left-leaning media outlet that covers the goings-on in Washington, D.C., had a headline for a story that read, quote, "Dems pressure White House to change economic message," end quote. According to the writers of that article, they stated, President Joe Biden placed a big bet that he could sell an improving economy under the Biden of Bidenomics. 3 months later, some allied Democrats fear he's made a serious misstep. Several top Biden allies have privately raised concerns about the phrase to the White House, according to two people familiar with the back-channeling. At this point, Bidenomics doesn't really have a strong answer to people's worries, end quote. And that is echoed by Will Marshall, president of the Progressive Policy Institute, a Democratic think tank. He said there ought to be a lot of thinking in the White House now about changes in the way they present their case for the economic good that this administration's done. Basically, they've not made their case. And Democrats are starting to realize that the economy that affects the majority of people is not willing to say that's a winning ticket. You can talk about the job numbers and pretend numbers in some of the legislation that was passed, but the public is only seeing the higher cost of living, and they don't see any progress in resolving their personal financial crisis. When you have so many people living from paycheck to paycheck, running up credit card debt for the very basics to live, and draining their savings, they're not going to respond favorably to someone telling them they should be supporting Bidenomics. The White House and its fellow liberals seem confounded that the media is not telling the public how good they have it. They keep demanding that the media talk up Biden's economic agenda, even if the media mavens realize it's not working. But the Biden campaign is committed to this philosophy as they try to win back the blue-collar vote in key Midwestern states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. But what they're missing is that only 10% of the workforce is employed in heavy manufacturing. The second flaw in their approach is how they keep repeating the fallacy of Biden creating 13 million new jobs. They ignore that a large percent of these jobs were put out of work by government policies during the pandemic, policies that Joe Biden supported. Eventually, they were coming back, no matter who the president is, and Biden didn't create them. In fact, he lost them through his pandemic policies. In summary, Joe Biden went to his basic roots and attempted to plagiarize something because, just like most of his life, he's not had an original thought that he could resolve the problem. What we have in Joe Biden is a mediocre guy who exemplified the Peter Principle, where he hung around long enough to keep rising to the top. He's been a political opportunist from the outset. Liberals forget that he voted to ban gay people from serving in the military and voted to ban same-sex marriage. Then when it was opportunist for him, he reversed his position. He was also one of the leading opponents of mandatory desegregation busing. But today he tells the African-American community, quote, "If you don't vote for me, you ain't black," end quote. The point of all this is Joe Biden has never had any clear-cut policy or direction for the nation. He takes an idea from other people, pretends he created him. If you were to look up the term ultimate politician, you would more than likely see Joe Biden's picture. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, hit the subscribe button. If you have a comment, please leave it.